Have you heard of someone who ran faster than horses? It looks like something out of a superhero movie, but it really happened. The Bible tells us the impressive story of Elijah, a prophet who, with divine force, surpassed the king's horses Ahab in a supernatural race. But this is not just a story of speed, it is an account of faith, obedience, and the extraordinary power of God. In this video, let's dive into the details of this incredible narrative from the epic confrontation on Mount Carmel against the prophets of Baal, through the miracle of the fire of the sky and the arrival of the long-awaited rain, to the unbelievable demonstration of divine strength in the race to Jezreel. Get ready for a journey full of spiritual lessons and challenges that continue to inspire us to this day. If you think you've seen miracles, wait until you know the story. And in the end, I want to know, what can this passage teach to your life? So you already subscribe to the channel. Leave a like and come with me on this trip for God's power and faithfulness. Elijah was not a warrior, not a trained athlete, but challenged one of the greatest forces of the time, King Ahab's horses. Imagine the scene: a tunic man running with his own legs, surpassing the fast real horses pulling a carriage. It seems impossible, but this was just one of the signs of God's power in the life of this prophet. This feat was not about physical resistance, but about a divine force that enables those who trust God. But before Elijah running, there was a much deeper context. The people of Israel were immersed in idolatry, influenced by the reign of Ahab and Jezebel, who promoted the cult of Baal. Faith in the true God was weakened, and Elijah was sent to bring the people back the right way. What seemed to be just a demonstration of speed was, in fact, a testimony of obedience and total surrender to the divine purpose. This supernatural race was not a simple, isolated event, but the outcome of a great spiritual battle. Elijah had already faced the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel and seen God respond with fire from heaven. Now, after praying for the end of the drought, he needed to prove once again that trusting God brings extraordinary results. And that's exactly what happened. The reign of Ahab and Jezebel was one of the darkest periods in Israel's history. Instead of leading the people in obedience to God, Ahab married Jezebel, a foreign woman who brought with her worship to Baal. It was not long before the lords of the Lord be replaced by pagan temples, and the prophets of God persecuted. Elijah arises in this scenario as a radius of hope, determined to restore true faith. But your mission would not be easy. Being a prophet at that time meant living under constant threat. Jezebel, with his power and influence, ordered the execution of all the servants of the Lord. Elijah, however, was not intimidated. Guided by God, he challenged King Ahab and declared a drought that would last years, a direct blow against Baal, who was considered the god of fertility and rain. This was not just a climate problem, it was a confrontation between truth and lies, between the power of God and the idols made by men. What was at stake was not just the fate of a country, but the faith of an entire people. Elijah knew that he needed to prove that the Lord was the only true God. This clash was not about politics or religion, but about the soul of Israel. Often, we face similar spiritual battles, the moments when we need to decide who we put our trust. Elijah teaches us that even when we are alone against the world, if God is by our side, we already have the majority. The great moment of confrontation has come. Elijah summoned all the people of Israel and the prophets of Baal to a challenge on Mount Carmel. The proposal was simple: each side would prepare an altar and cry to his God. The true God would respond with fire from heaven. Baal's prophets started first, screaming, dancing, and even cutting themselves to draw the attention of his idol. But nothing happened. No spark, no sign. Elijah, in an ironic tone, suggested that Baal may be sleeping or traveling. When it was Elijah's turn, he did something unexpected. He had the altar be soaked with water, making it humanly impossible for any fire to light up. Then he prayed. No shouts, no despair of faith, and the answer immediately came. A powerful fire descended from the sky and completely consumed the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and even the surrounding water. The people were appalled. There was no doubt the Lord was the true God. It was a moment of spiritual turn to Israel. This event teaches us that God responds to those who trust in Him with all the heart. While the prophets of Baal trusted empty rituals, Elijah trusted the Lord's power and promise. In our lives, we also face challenges where we need to decide on those who put our faith. Mount Carmel reminds us that true strength is not in our efforts, but in fully dependent on God. After years of drought by plaguing Israel, Elijah prophesied the arrival of the long-awaited rain. He warned King Ahab to prepare, for a great storm was on his way. However, the sky was still clean, with no sign of change. Here we see a powerful principle. Elijah did not wait for visible evidence before believing. He trusted God's promise even before seeing the results. While Ahab was heading to the palace, Elias climbed to the top of Mount Carmel and began to pray fervor. He asked his servant to watch the horizon, but 6 times the answer was the same nothing. Elias did not give up. He continued to intercede until, in the 7th time, the servant finally spotted a small cloud the size of a man's hand. To many it might seem insignificant, but to Elijah it was the sign of God's faithfulness. Just like Elijah, we often pray for something and we see no immediate results. But persistence in faith is essential. The answer may seem small at first, almost imperceptible, but that does not mean that the miracle is not on the way. The small cloud grew rapidly, and soon the heavens filled with dark clouds. The rain finally fell over the dry earth, restoring Israel. God honors those who trust Him without doubting. After the rain finally arrived, something surprising happened. God gave Elijah a supernatural force to run faster than King's horses. Ahab. When Elijah received this divine power, he did not hesitate. With a supernatural speed, he surpassed the horses in a race to Jezreel, an incredible feat that could not be explained otherwise but as a miracle. The race was not just a physical action, but a visible testimony of God's power in your life. Imagine the scenario: King Ahab, with his horses and carriages, going to Jezreel at full speed, but Elijah, nothing but his faith in the strength of God, running ahead. There was no logical explanation for what happened. It was a miracle happening before everyone's eyes. What seemed impossible was accomplished through Elijah's obedience and unshakable confidence in God. This event not only revealed God's supernatural power, but it was also a symbol of overcoming. For us, this story teaches us that when we trust God, He gives us the strength to overcome the challenges that seem beyond our abilities. Elijah's race is a reminder that faith not only keeps us moving, but drives us beyond what we imagine being possible. We often face difficulties that make us doubt our own strength, but by trusting the power of God, we can overcome any obstacle that appears in our way. Elijah's account teaches us deep lessons about faith, obedience, and trust in God. When we think of Elijah running faster than King's horses, we need to reflect on how Elijah's faith enabled him to perform the impossible. Faith is not just believing that something can happen, but fully trust that God has control over all situations, even when circumstances seem challenging. In acting with faith, Elijah not only experienced a miracle, but also demonstrated God's power by trusting Him. Elijah's obedience is another fundamental point. When God instructed him to run, Elijah obeyed without question. Obedience to God leads us to a deeper level of intimacy with Him, allowing its divine strength to manifest in our lives. Elijah's story challenges us to be obedient, even when we do not completely understand God's purpose. In trusting in Him, we see her hand acting in powerful and unexpected ways, as it happened with Elijah. Finally, the story of Elijah also teaches us about overcoming. We all face moments when challenges seem insurmountable. However, Elijah's supernatural race to Jezreel is a reminder that God enables us to overcome all barriers when we trust Him. When we go through difficult situations, we can remember that, like Elijah, we have a God that gives us the strength to run when everyone has stopped. The lesson that remains is clear: with faith, obedience, and trust in God, there are no limits to what we can achieve. We have come to the end of this incredible journey with Elijah, a prophet who left us a legacy of faith, courage, and obedience. How can you apply this story to your life? What challenges are you facing that seem to be too big to overcome? Remember that just as God gave Elijah supernatural strength, He can do the same for you too. Believe in the power of God and your ability to guide you through storms and obstacles. Now I want to invite you to reflect more on this story and what it means to you. If something resonated in your heart, share in the comments. Let's build a community of faith together, learning and growing every day. Be sure to support the channel with your like, subscribe, and enable notifications to not miss any new content. May the divine strength of God be with you in every step of your journey.